Welcome to today's webinar, STEM for All and All for STEM, Counseling Tools for Student Engagement by Megan Pollock. My name is Greg Nagy, and I am the Virtual Learning Community Manager from The Ohio State University, who provides technical support for the STEM Equity Pipeline project. Before we start the presentation, I would like to go over some housekeeping items for this webinar. This webinar is scheduled to last roughly 1 hour and is being recorded in order to view this presentation in its entirety later. Recorded webinar will be available in the next few days on the stemequitypipeline.org website. As you've already found out, you will be watching the presenter present slides through the Adobe Connect interface while listening to her talk over your computer speakers. All the participants' microphones have been automatically muted. If you would like, you can make the presentation larger for just your screen by clicking the full screen button at the top of your Adobe Connect window. You can also download the slides and other files from the Files pod in your Adobe Connect window. Click on the file you want to download and then click the Download Files button. This will open the file as a link in a different tab in your browser. The presenter will answer most questions after the presentation. We can take questions at any time. This is how we take questions. At any time during the presentation, you may submit a question by typing your question in the chat pod at the bottom of your Adobe Connect window. I would like to start the webinar by introducing Freda Walker, consultant for the STEM Equity Pipeline project. Freda? You should be on the right one now, Freda.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon or good morning. Welcome to our first webinar for this year, STEM for All and All for STEM. They're counseling tools for student engagement. Our webinars highlight programs, strategies that work and are ones that you can implement. Let's see. Uh-oh. Help me, Megan.
Great, Freda. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
the introduction. All right, well, let's dive in,
Our
everyone.
funding today
So is the
from the
idea
National
that
Alliance for Partnerships and Equity,
NAEP,
and the National Science Foundation,
is that there are
and we thank them for their
for
support.
every type of student. So the point of this session, this webinar, is to empower
We'd like
you
to start by finding out how you heard about this webinar. We have a poll, and as you take the poll, you can see the results, and we'll see who's here today.
So I want to give you just a little bit of history, a little bit of background of where
you heard about it
came from. So we started working with counselors in 2008 talking about careers in STEM, and I was a part of that, and as I was practicing as an engineer. So I went to talk to counselors to tell them how cool careers in engineering are. But then as I started my PhD in engineering education, I learned a lot about
I think it's looking like most people still continue to hear about from our STEM pipeline email, and also we really appreciate the fact that colleagues forward this the advertisement on to others, and there are a few listservs. So thank you for your responses.
Where the toolkit came from. So one, we believe that
we'll move to the next
educators
slide.
make a difference. The second principle is that the STEM professionals are in demand.
We'd like to remind you that all of our webinars are archived on the STEMequitypipeline.org website. Also, if you would like to have a certificate of completion a day, at the very end with the survey, we'll explain how you can get that certificate.
And help shape our future. And that and finally,
we have some resources. You'll see there's what we call a pod that says Tools and Resources. It's over on the right-hand side right now. And you can download resources from today's webinar. There is a handout that will explain, it actually gives you the contact information for our speaker, and also the website that I just mentioned, the STEM Equity Pipeline. There is a PDF of the career toolkit that you would, an order form that you might like to download. So you can click on those, and when you click on them, it'll highlight, and then you can actually ask it to download to your computer.
And the toolkit that you can order online.
We also have a chat function. It's on the right-hand side. And when you look at this chat function, we really would like to have participation. Ask your questions in the chat pod, or you can also, if you have resources that pertain to what the presenter is telling us about today, then you can write them right in there, and other people will be able to utilize them.
But then we also have two key pieces.
We'd like to know who's participating in the webinar today, so let's run that poll.
We have 4 lesson plans and activities that are included in the toolkit.
Those of you that have been on before know what we're up to here.
In addition, we have a product called Kudos cards, and we'll talk about those as well. And then online that you can link to from the web address there on the bottom, NAEP Equity.
I would like to tell you that if you write in other, could you please chat in the chat function and tell us who you represent, what agency you're with, or
what I want you to do is
just your business if you're a business owner.
Create a list of all the items.
So we can see that today we mostly have counselors on, which is great. We have a few administrators. We appreciate their support.
Fill in your answers.
We have
all the things that you've used today.
Some state agency staff and some STEM organization staff. Again, it looks like we have about 7 people that are from other agencies, and if you'll write those in the chat pod, I'd like to see some information there if we can do that.
Cell phone, lots of absolutely.
I can see that people are doing that, so thank you so much. Let's move on to our next slide. You can continue to chat.
You can scroll through on your own to see what else
I would also like to know if there is anyone watching this webinar with you. Sometimes you're watching by yourself, but other times there are people that are watching with you. So we'll run that poll. It'll give us an idea of how many more people might be at your computer with you.
Now you can see the list. Someone used a jet ski this morning? Wow, I want your job. Okay, so I can tell that you guys have used lots of things that have been engineered today. So I'm going to
Okay, it
end
looks
this
like
poll,
most of you are watching
and
it
I'm
on your
going to
own.
challenge you to
We do have a
think
few other
of
people
one
that are
thing.
watching it, so
I want
we
you to
appreciate
now
those of you that team up together and then can have
think of one
discussions
thing
about the
that you've used
topics.
today that has not been engineered.
Let's move to our
So
next
the question
slide.
now is, can you identify one thing that you've used
This
today that
presentation
has not been engineered?
really
If you've
provides
got that,
some excellent
list it in the box there,
background
and I've got the
and
broadcast
resources and the
results
toolkit
for you.
We also
that
need to open
Megan
it,
is
Megan.
going to talk with us about. And I introduce
There you
Megan
go.
and welcome
Okay.
her because she is our new professional development director for NAEP. So Megan, you're
The first
on,
answer
and
is
thank you
brain,
for all
banana,
your
apple.
expertise
Okay,
that you bring to this
your sense of
presentation.
humor. A banana plant. Okay. All right, so thank you for your contributions. I'm going to talk a little bit about a few of these things. Okay, so a couple of things on here. We've got someone talked about fruit, banana, apple. Well, let's think about how that apple got to you. First of all, the apple was planted. The tree was planted, the plant was planted, and I imagine that they used some kind of machine to do that. How the seed was even packaged and put into an envelope to sent to the farmer, that was influenced by engineering. And how the banana was shipped to the store, the different coatings that they put on the fruit for you to be able to enjoy it a little bit longer after that. So you can see that even fruit, in some essence, has been engineered in a way for us to enjoy it. Water. Let's talk about water a little bit. So if you think about water, first of all, it's been filtered, and it's in an incredible pipe system to get it to your house. Or if you're drinking bottled water, think about the manufacturing that's required, the engineering that's required for you to enjoy that water. So your brain, your sense of humor, I don't have a great response for your sense of humor, but I do know that there are many people who have different components that are in their brain that are engineered to help them function. People who have epilepsy can have devices implanted in their brain to help control those seizures. And so while it may not certainly affect you, it can affect other people. If you, let's see, someone has a book here. So a book, even a book, has been engineered. The type font, the printing, the paper. I grew up in southeast Texas, which is would always smell from the big paper plants, the big paper mills, because we're just kind of surrounded with trees. So we learned very early as kids how paper is engineered and manufactured. And so certainly lots of parts of that book have been engineered. So to close this idea, we can tell that our world is engineered. Everything around us has been influenced by engineering. But not only engineering is important. It's all of the science, the technology, the mathematicians that contribute to these things that we enjoy. And they influence every part of our life. So one of the challenges that we have when talking to students about engineering and STEM careers is they're less tangible than so many other careers. You know, we grow up aware of what doctors are, what nurses are, firefighters, teachers, because they have uniforms, they have really kind of clear expectations of what their jobs are, and it's easier for us to understand as young people. But it's a little bit more difficult when we start talking about sort of these esoteric ideas of where things come from. But this is a great way to engage students in this conversation about understanding where engineers and where engineering exists in our life, and where all the technology and the scientists influence that as well. It's all around us. It's everything. When you talk about how you got to work today or how the students got to school, it's not just the vehicle that they rode in. It's the roads and how the roads are engineered. And the different chemicals in the road that scientists contribute to keep those roads together. And so engineering is all around us, and this is a great activity, and this is one of the lesson plans that's in the toolkit that would help you to facilitate this with students. And also in the lesson plan are a few responses to some of the common things that like people suggested. A lot of people will suggest food, they'll suggest art, but you can talk about how art is generally created from substance, and those things are engineered. So anyways, there's a lesson plan in the toolkit that you can use, and it's called Name One Thing. So let's move forward to the next slide. Bringing it back to the big idea here is that we're talking about STEM for all and all for STEM. So how do we do that, and why do we want to do that? So the first thing that's really important for us to do, and that we're going to talk about today, is how important positive messaging is for us in how we talk about STEM. We've got to learn how to explain the value of STEM careers using positive messaging that is attractive to a diverse group of students. In addition, we can learn what the work values are and relate STEM careers to those work values. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how STEM careers can be appropriate for students with all different kinds of work values. And the third thing is pathways. So often we think about STEM equals four-year degree or more. But we're going to talk briefly about the opportunities in STEM that are available to students with certificates or apprenticeship or two-year degrees and the demand for those students as well. And so when we open up the pathways to STEM, it really opens up the opportunity for a diverse group of students to participate in these careers. So the National Academy of Engineering came up with a list of grand challenges for the 21st century. You can find this list and more information about it on the URL listed below, and I also have the resources listed in the STEM webinar resource handout on the right tools and resource box, so you can download that and have the links to see more there. But essentially what they did is the National Academy of Engineering drew together some of the brightest minds in the world to think about and consider what are the challenges that we have to face in the next years. And so this is a list that they came up with. It's a list of 14. There's nothing magical about 14, but it's a list of challenges that they decided that we needed to solve and that they believed were solvable. And so what's really key about this list is it's the why. It's the big why do we care? Why are we doing this? And I know so often students in their classes are like, well, why do I need to learn this math? Why do I need to learn this science? Why does this matter? And this is why. These are the problems that we are trying to solve, that their generation will continue to try to solve. And so if you go to that URL, engineeringchallenges.org, there's a great video. It's a little less than 7 minutes, and it helps students, yourself and your students, understand what are the challenges for the 21st century and how we're going to try to solve those using the scientists, technologists, engineers, and mathematicians. So because there's such an incredible demand for these challenges, we have lots of problems to solve. We need people to solve them. So I don't think it's any secret that STEM careers are in demand, so I just want to give you a few fast facts to kind of help frame the conversation, and then we'll move forward. If you have more questions on this, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to answer your questions. So the first thing is workforce growth. When we look at the science and engineering workforce, it has grown at 5 times the rate of the general workforce since 1950. And even over the last decade and period of economic decline, the science and engineering workforce has still grown at about 5 times the rate as the rest of the workforce. And so that's about 6% over the last 60 years, and then even at 1.4% versus 2% of the rest of the workforce over the last decade. The next key thing is retirement. So many science and engineering workers are reaching traditional retirement age. So if we look at the data from 2006 is that 26% were older than age 50 at that time, and we're a few years past that, so we know that they are continuing to reach retirement age. And so what's happening is we've got this vast group of people that are approaching retirement, but we don't have anyone in the proverbial pipeline to fill that void that's going to happen. The next thing is that STEM careers are growing. So the jobs that our students are going to have, we don't even necessarily know what they are right now. And so if we look at the fastest growing occupations, 7 out of 10 of them requiring at least an associate's degree are in STEM disciplines. The second really key thing that I think that really challenges a lot of our perceptions about STEM careers and pathways is the availability of jobs to students with 2-year degrees. So this data point came out of the Brookings report. I highly encourage you to read it. It's called The Hidden STEM Economy. What they found is that half of all STEM jobs are available to workers without a 4-year college degree. So if you think about STEM, we think about the technology that's required to do that. So you've got, say, for example, you've got the engineers who have at least a 4-year degree designing and creating things. But the people with technical 2-year degrees, those are the people who are running the machines, running the billion-dollar equipment, and operating the things that the engineers are kind of helping to instruct them. But these are highly skilled jobs, and there are lots of opportunity for people with 2-year degrees. In fact, more jobs available to them than with a 4-year degree. So think about that and how that might challenge your perception of who gets to go into these careers. The next thing is about STEM knowledge. It's not necessarily about STEM degrees or STEM careers, but just a bigger picture of how imperative it is for our students to be prepared and literate as far as it comes to STEM. So as of 2011, there are 26 million U.S. jobs. 20% of all jobs require a high level of knowledge in any one STEM field. So regardless of whether they choose to major in any kind of STEM discipline or choose a STEM career, it's really key that they have STEM skills to be competitive in the market moving forward. So that's a quick picture of the demand for STEM careers and to kind of frame the conversation. But let's dig in. So one of the things that I really want you to take away from this, and again, this is just a brief webinar, but we want you to really think about all of the pathways and opportunities that are in STEM careers. It's no longer the same picture that we've all held about 4-year plus degrees. There are incredible opportunities for students with certificates and associate's degree, and then all the way up to a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate as well. So one of the activities that we've designed helps you to sort of map these out with your students, and so we'll talk about that in just a second. But what's also key for us to understand is that an education in STEM enables many career options and opportunities. So a lot of jobs that we think about require a STEM degree and require significant STEM knowledge, but they aren't the typical thing. I know when I worked as an engineer for Texas Instruments, I was really shocked to understand that to be in marketing and sales for Texas Instruments, you had to have an engineering degree. Because I have always been a little bit more gregarious than most, and I was really drawn to that idea. I liked the idea of marketing. I liked the creative sense of that. I liked that I would get to interact with people and travel all over the world to work with customers. But companies like Texas Instruments, they only hire engineers to do that job. And the reason is because you need to know the language to talk to engineers. You've got to know the products to sell the products. And so that's a great opportunity that we don't often think about for students with technical degrees. If we look at business leadership, 1 in 5 Fortune 500 CEOs has a degree in engineering. It's the most common undergraduate degree among CEOs, more than business or more than any other degree. And so the reason is because engineers make great problem solvers, and as well as scientists and technologists who generally have a lot of the same skill set. Other things that we don't always think about are biomedical engineering. So getting an undergraduate degree in something like that and then going into medicine allows doctors to have the skill set and the knowledge to build really incredible devices to help patients. Or patent law, getting an undergrad in a STEM discipline and then going on and getting a law degree helps you to have the knowledge and the know-how to talk about the technology and to understand the really deep technical documents that entrepreneurs and industry produce. And then as well, educators are in an incredible demand, and I'm not telling you something that you don't already know. We know that there's a shortage of teachers who are skilled in science, technology, engineering, and math, and so there are great opportunities for people to get the degrees and then go on and to be educators. So how are we going to get students to do this? How are we going to get students to see the big picture, to see why engineering and science and technology and math, why they matter? How are we going to get students to see the different pathways? Well, we have to change the conversation. We have to change how we talk about engineering and how we talk about science and careers within STEM. You know, historically, there is a stereotype that STEM people are really gifted at science and math. They're going to be your AP stars in physics and calculus. That they're a lot of times there's a stereotype about personality that they're going to be gamers or something like this. But the reality is that there are careers in STEM available to all kinds of students, and we don't want to just limit a certain type of student to these kinds of careers. But when we think about engineering, when I think about when I was a young student considering going into a career in computer science or engineering, I was afraid I was going to be stuck in a cubicle. I was afraid I was going to be working on widgets that nobody would care about. I just didn't feel like the work initially was going to have any meaning. But then when I learned more about what I would get to do with my degrees in computer science and electrical engineering, that's when things really changed for me and my interest was really sparked. And so that's what we want to do for our students. We want to help talk about STEM careers in a way that is attractive to their interest. So the National Academy of Engineering, they commissioned a study, literally like a market research study of what is engineering and how do we talk about engineering in a way that is attractive to students. And they came up with 3 messages that were both the engineers agreed were true and that the students liked and that resonated with them. So I've taken a liberty here and I've expanded it from just engineering to talk about STEM professionals and STEM careers. But here are the 3 messages. The first one is that STEM professionals make a world of difference and help shape the future. The second is that STEM careers are essential to our health, happiness, and safety. And the third is that STEM professionals are creative and collaborative problem solvers. So these are the messages that we want to use when we talk about STEM careers to our students. We want to lead with the difference that you can make as a STEM professional and lead with the problems that you're going to get to solve that are going to change the world rather than, well, if you want to be in STEM, you've got to take this math. That's not the hook, right? Like there was a website, there was a very popular website that had college information for students that just a couple of years ago. If you went to the site for engineering, the response asked questions and it said, do you like to work really late hours in the lab? Do you like to work really difficult calculus problems? Then you might want to be an engineer. So I don't know about you, but that's not the most attractive sales pitch to me. Now, it might be for a few students, but not for the vast majority of us. But when we learn to talk about STEM careers and the value and the difference they make in the world, that's when we're really going to interest our students and motivate them to take the right courses that they need to enter into these careers. So these are the messages that I encourage you to use, and these are the foundation for all of the tools and the toolkit that NAEP has created. So one of the activities in the toolkit is based on this idea of health, happiness, and safety. And what you can see here on the screen is that there's 2 worksheets, kind of a front and back. And in addition, in the toolkit, there's a lesson plan for how to lead this with your students. But the worksheet on the left has an array of jobs and job descriptions or roles that you might do in this job. So it introduces 20 different careers. And the challenge is to help your students think about how each of these influences our health, happiness, and safety. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's really kind of whatever they think because in general, a lot of them are essential to both health, happiness, and safety. And so this is one of the activities available to you in the toolkit. Okay, now I want to, Freda, do we have any questions on this section before I move to the next section? Yes, thanks. I forgot to put that into the resource. I'm going to write it in the chat box. It's called the Brookings Report, the Hidden STEM Economy. There you go. Yeah, I can. Yeah, we can post the fast facts. That would be fine. And then I can post the sources to those as well because I didn't have them on this slide. So we can do that. Fred, if you'll make a note to remind me to do that, that'd be great. Thanks. All right, any more questions from this section before we move forward? Okay. All right, thanks. Okay, so let's go back to another poll. So the question I want to ask you is to list all of the reasons why someone might choose a career. Let's see. Okay, list all of the reasons in the poll to the left why people may choose a career. We've got things like money, interest. A lot of people are saying money. I know that's why all of you went into education. Life change, passion, parental influence, self-satisfaction, they love what they do, financial stability, passion, making a difference, because they're interested, passionate, great, knowledge, passion. security. All right, great. Well, everyone, thank you so much for your responses. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now, and we can talk a little bit about what this means. Okay, so you guys have some great responses. You talked about money, you talked about passion, curiosity, family time, a joy for problem solving because they're interested in it, self-satisfaction, need a job, financial stability, job security, career interest, making a difference. Okay, yeah, these are great responses, and they lead right into work values. So when we talk about careers, it's important for us to understand that students and humans and people generally select careers based on a set of values. And these are different for all people. And the values that I'm going to present to you today are 4 key work values. There are other work values, but the literature shows that it really kind of boils down to 4 key work values that we use and consider when we're finding a pathway for ourselves. And why they're so important is that there's a really strong correlation between job satisfaction and how well the job aligns with your work values. So say, for example, if I choose a job that is not aligned with my work values, I'm likely going to not like it and be very unhappy. Whereas on the flip side, if I choose a job that really supports and aligns with my work values, I'm going to be probably doing a better job because I'll be happier and have the life and balance that I want. So to dive into the work values, the first is an intrinsic work value. And that talks about interest and autonomy. So some of the responses that you guys had in the poll were related to interest. You like it, you're passionate about it, and so that's really what an intrinsic value is. In addition to intrinsic interest is this idea of autonomy, this idea that you want to kind of be your own boss or you want to manage your own part of the pie. One of the great things that I value about careers and STEM and many careers, because there's certainly some variability, is that you get to manage your own projects a lot of time, your piece of a project or your slice of the pie per se. You certainly report back to your clients, you report back to your team, you report back to your bosses, but there's a lot of autonomy over your different projects and pieces of the projects. And so that might be a really attractive feature to some students. So when we talk about careers in STEM, we want to make sure that we're relating to that specific work value. The next work, let me also mention that the research is showing that younger generations are increasingly opting towards careers based on intrinsic values as they're seeing a decrease in 2 of these other values that we're going to talk about. And so when you think about historically, the baby boomer generation has been known to choose careers that it's just what you do, it's just the work that you have,
Yes, we do.
Long tradition has shown
if you could please
boomers
tell us
stay in careers for a really long
the
time,
name of the article that you mentioned about STEM jobs.
We're just not seeing that that's happening now in the same way that it has been in the past. And so there's this shift from some sort of extrinsic motivation that we're going to talk about next towards this intrinsic, I just want to love my job and be interested in it. So the next value is an extrinsic value.
Yes, and then another thing, people are interested in getting the fast facts and the data, and they ask if the PowerPoint is going to be downloaded, could they get it, and I said that we would just talk about it, but is there a way that we could just get those facts and the data?
I have been
could we actually post something on our site where we archive the webinar?
Just the other day I was at my high school talking to 2 classes of students about how great careers in STEM are, and sometimes I feel myself so guilty because I know the right messages, but a lot of times I start with, well, they make a lot of money.
I have it written down.
And so,
Thank you.
And it just depends on different people's work values, but I know when I was 18, that was the biggest drawing factor for me to get out of small town Texas. But essentially, the values change over time, but we can't always talk about STEM only in the context of, well, they make a lot of money, because that's not appealing to all students. We want to be able to hit all 4 quadrants of work values when we talk about STEM careers. When we talk about job security, well, we already talked about demand. We talked about how in-demand STEM professionals are. Now, granted, there's certainly some cycles of change that we all see, but when you look at the opportunities available to people with these kinds of education, there are certainly jobs available and many more coming in the future. So a fast fact on that is if you look at and include all of the jobs directly using STEM skills, including those in health and medicine, STEM jobs represent 70% of the highest 150 paying jobs in the country. That's a really large percentage of STEM jobs representing the money in this country. So the next work value is a prestige work value, and that's a desire to have a respected occupation. And so and again, there's a list of the most respected occupations in the U.S., and many of the ranks represent careers in STEM. And so, and I already talked about how the most common undergraduate degree among Fortune 500 CEOs is engineering, and that's 1 in 5 has a degree in that. But it also is just more than being a CEO. I was talking to my dad this weekend, and he was telling me about some work that he does. He works for an engineering firm. And he was saying that one of his colleagues took some credit for his work, and he was really frustrated by that. And what that means to me is my father has this prestige value. I mean, nobody really wants people to take credit for their work, but that was really important to him. And I was thinking, wow, Dad just really wants people to respect him for his contribution, that he wants people to recognize his value. And so to me, that's one of his drawing factors to his career and his occupation. And so when we hear kind of language about that from our students, we can try to relate that to STEM careers. That's the idea of learning about these work values and learning how to talk about STEM careers in that way. The next work value is social values. So a couple of you listed on the poll the idea of making a difference, but what's different that I didn't see on the list is the idea of wanting to work with people. And so when we think about careers in STEM, I know for myself when I was a young person, I was afraid of being relegated to a cubicle for the rest of my life. And that's certainly not the case at all. Having worked in industry, I was constantly in the lab. I was constantly in the fabrication area. I was working with people in Malaysia and Singapore. I was working with people across the campus at Texas Instruments. And so there was tons of working with other people. But I also knew that a lot of the work that I was doing was really making a difference and contributing to society. And that's what was really kind of rewarding to me. So the technology that I worked on at TI was called the digital micromirror device, and it was part of the digital light processing group. So when you go to the movie theater, if it's a HD theater, there's something like a 97% chance that you're going to be watching it with the DLP technology. And so that's cool and all, but I don't watch a lot of movies, and so that wasn't really rewarding to me. To some of my colleagues, they loved that they were creating a technology that was making people happy, and that's again one of the tenets that we talk about when we change the conversation. But what I really loved is a newer application when it was newer back then, of how we were using the technology. And the same technology that was created for entertainment value was being used in a medical application to help tiny babies. And I won't go into the whole technology here, but I know that that was really rewarding for me to know that the technology that I was working on and contributing to was helping people and helping tiny babies. And so again, we just have to learn how to frame the language of what STEM careers are and the difference that they make and align to these different work values so that we can really attract and interest our students in these careers. So just a reminder of why we're talking about work values is that there is a strong correlation between how well your job and career aligns with your work values and job satisfaction, and ultimately success, right? If you are in a job that you hate, you're probably not going to be as good at it as you would be in a job that you love. And so I think our goal for all of our students